Before we dive into today's epic sci-fi journey, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic storytelling. What would you do if the galaxy's deadliest predator chose you over the entire Galactic Council? Drop your thoughts below and let's see who would earn the loyalty of a beast no one could tame. Now, strap in. You're about to witness a story of power, trust, and a bond that defies the stars. The Galactic Council chamber pulsed with a cold, artificial stillness, the kind that preceded decisions designed to shift civilizations. Holographic avatars of 12 different species hovered above obsidian thrones, their forms flickering beneath the towering spires of crystalline architecture. Suspended midair in the center of the chamber was a rotating containment field, glowing with cold blue lines. Within it paced a beast that seemed carved from living nightmare. 12 feet tall when standing fully upright, covered in a carapace of obsidian-scaled armor that rippled with bioreactive light, the last living Carnix predator bared its fangs. Its amber eyes glowed, not with rage, but with the calm of something that had already accepted it was superior to everything surrounding it. Varkitel, the unbroken apex. It had killed everything the Council threw at it. Psychic inhibitors failed. Neural dampeners melted under its synaptic fire. The synth tamers spoke of it in hushed tones, recounting how it tore through battalions without blinking, how it had turned even other Carnix to ash when they tried to submit to captivity. Now, it stood surrounded by silent judgment, a beast not caged by technology but by curiosity. Why hadn't it left the forested moon when it had the chance? Why did it linger near one insignificant life form, a human of all things? Captain Ilara Miles, the Archon of Velocity, murmured. Exobiologist. Former war commander. Medically discharged after the Draloth offensive. Currently unaligned. No formal allegiance to any Council faction. She's been living alone on the jungle moon of Kepri 9, added the Rixian intelligence node, its voice synthetic and emotionless. We detect no weapons infrastructure, no containment fields. Only limited biosignal detection tech and a dampened shelter pod. And the Apex? Asked the scaled mouth of the Threx Dominion representative. Has remained within 12 kilometers of her habitat for 72 cycles. No sign of aggression. Tracking behavior consistent with observation. Possibly imprinting. Absurd, hissed the Threx. A Carnix does not imprint. But it had. Or something like it. The Council voted. A cruiser would be set. Not to destroy Varketel, not yet. No, this was a test. If the last Apex could be tethered using the neural override system, then the entire Carnix genome might be repurposed. The Council needed weapons again. The outer territories were unstable. Fear was rising. A tame Apex would become not just a symbol, but the ultimate deterrent. All they needed to do was rip it away from the human. Ilara Miles adjusted the amplifier on her neck collar and dropped the signal spike into the muddy soil. The air on Kepri 9 was heavy with pollen drift and moisture. It made her breath feel like it weighed more than her body. But she was used to it now. She had to be. 2 years ago, she'd left everything, the Council's military, her research division, even Earth's orbit, and come here to the edge of forgotten space. The jungle here grew over the bones of war, absorbing craters and abandoned tech like vines consuming guilt. She studied it because it healed what the galaxy refused to. Or so she told herself. In truth, she was hiding. From the people she couldn't save. From the blood-soaked memories of her last command. From the one young Carnix cub she'd rescued, who later disappeared during a Council bombing run. She'd buried that memory deep. Too deep. A low rustle stirred behind her. Not wind. Not a bird. Ilara turned slowly. The sensation had returned, the one she'd felt for 3 nights now. Haunted. But not attacked. Her hand rested on the pulse stunner clipped to her belt. Useless, really? If it was what she feared, she'd be dead before she could aim. She activated the scan module built into her ocular lens. Thermal traces, massive, 20 meters to her left. She stood still. Didn't blink. The jungle parted without sound. It stepped into view. She'd seen hollow feeds. Training sims. Anatomy breakdowns. But none of that compared to the real thing. The towering form of Virgil, his black onyx body glistening with a fine sheen of jungle mist. His talons curled slowly. His breath misted in rhythm. His eyes burned gold. And he looked at her. Not through her. At her. Ilara didn't speak. Words would mean nothing. And she couldn't run, not because she feared being chased, but because something inside her refused to show fear. Then, recognition. His head tilted. Her breath caught. The pattern of scars across his chest, That line across the second thoracic plate, she had seen it before. Years ago, on the cub she pulled from burning wreckage during an ambush. The one whose mother was killed by council drones. The one that roared like fire and trembled like a child when she shielded him with her own body. "No way," she whispered. A low growl, almost a rumble of memory, escaped his chest. He stepped closer. Her heart hammered. Another step. Now only 3 meters away. She reached, not for a weapon but for her ration pack. Slowly, deliberately, she opened it and placed a hydration cube on a flat stone between them. She backed away. Varike looked at it. Then at her. Then, incredibly, crouched and sniffed the offering. He didn't eat it. He left it untouched, eyes never leaving hers, and turned away. No aggression. No claim. Only something more profound. He had come not to hunt, but to be seen. Orbiting Kepri 9, the Celestra exited warp. Synth Tamer Corvin adjusted the neural override rig, flanked by his 2 handler drones. The interior of the containment module glowed with stabilizers, preloaded with enough sedative gas to down 10 combat drones. But Corvin knew it wouldn't be enough. If the Apex resisted, they'd have to go live. He hated going live. "Signal the outpost. Begin atmospheric descent," ordered Captain Nairai. "And the human?" "She's collateral." Corvin smirked. "Collateral bites harder than most species. We should have terminated her when the Apex made contact. She's useful. The beast is drawn to her. That's our leverage." Below, Ilara sat on the porch of her faded prefabricated shelter, staring into the trees. He hadn't returned that night, but she felt him out there, watching, deciding. She didn't know if she wanted him to return, or if she feared what would happen when he did. The wind carried an unnatural hum, a low-frequency pulse. Not jungle-born. She stood quickly. Looked up. Lights streaked across the sky like spears of fire. Council ships. She grabbed her comlink, but it was already jammed. They were coming. Not for her. For him. He returned as the ship touched down. Not crashing through trees or howling threats, but quietly. Suddenly. As if he had always been standing behind her. Ilara turned. His eyes locked with hers. He made no sound. Then he did something unexpected. He extended his claws, and pressed one to his chest. A symbol. A choice. The sound of armed drones whirred through the air, and council boots hit the ground like rolling thunder. Ilara raised her hands, shouted warnings, but they ignored her. "Stand down," she yelled. "You don't understand, he's not attacking." "Out of the way, civilian," barked Corvin, his rig already pulsing with electrical override. "We'll take it from here." She stepped in front of the Apex. Varike tensed. A snarl curled his lip. "Please," she whispered without turning, her voice trembling. "Don't hurt them. Don't hurt anyone." The drones fired. Ilara screamed. And the jungle exploded. But not with violence. With motion. A blur of black tore through the trees, disarming drones in seconds, disabling without killing. Corvin lunged with the override rig, only for it to be shattered with one precise strike. Then stillness. Ilara crouched in the mud, arms covering her head. Silence fell. She looked up. Varike stood over her, wings partially extended, shielding her with his body. His breathing was heavy. Controlled. The council team lay stunned but alive. And yet he had not run. He had made a stand, not against the council, but for her. From the battered comm unit in the field tent, a transmission crackled. "Council command to Celestra, report. Have you secured the Apex?" Corvin wiped blood from his lip and looked at the silent figure in the clearing, the predator kneeling beside a human woman, watching her breathe as if her life was the only order he'd obey. He swallowed. "Negative," he whispered. There was no tether. No neural override. Only a choice. And the Apex had made it. For the human alone. The rain fell in thick vertical sheets, tapping against the translucent canopy stretched over the field tent like a relentless drumbeat. Inside, the air was heavy with static and silence. Corvin stood by the diagnostics console, arms crossed, eyes trained on the sensor feed. Across from him, Ilara sat on a supply crate, her hands bound with biocuffs, a bruise forming across her cheekbone. "He didn't kill us," she said, breaking the silence. "That's what should worry you." Corvin didn't respond. His attention flicked back to the feed, where the Apex now lay at the perimeter of the camp. Not pacing. Not snarling. Just waiting. The rest of the squad had retreated to defensive positions after the failed extraction. One of the drones had been reduced to slag, 2 synth tamers in medical stasis. And yet, despite every reason to finish them, the creature had done nothing more than stand between them and Alara, then sit down in the open like a guardian beast carved from shadow. "You think this is about you?" Corvin finally asked, his voice tinged with contempt. "It isn't. He's not loyal. He's calculating. He sees advantage in keeping you alive. I didn't ask for his loyalty." "No," Corvin said, stepping closer. "But he gave it anyway. That's the problem." The tent flap parted and Captain Nairai entered, her expression unreadable, her uniform soaked through. She tossed a data chip onto the console. "Council override order came through," she said. "They want the Apex tethered within 24 hours. Failing that, lethal force is authorized." Corvin scoffed. "As if that'll do any good." "Alara," Nairai said, turning to her. "You're going to help us. Or you're going to disappear into a tribunal cell on Jovia Prime and never see daylight again." "I'm not helping you enslave him." "This isn't about slavery," Nairai replied. "It's about survival. The outer territories are collapsing. Piracy, uprisings, full planetary breakaways. The Karnics are a weapon we can't afford to leave in the wild. A single one is worth an entire fleet if properly controlled." "You don't control beings like him," Alara said, her voice low. "You just delay the moment they decide they've had enough." Nairai leaned down until their eyes met. "You bonded with him. Use that. Bring him in." "I didn't bond with him," Alara said. "He remembers me. I didn't earn it. I just treated him like something alive." "Close enough," Corvin muttered, already keying in activation codes. "We'll need you to speak to him. Calm him. Get close." "You want me to be bait?" "We want results," Nairai said. "Whatever this thing is between you two, use it." They cut the cuffs and shoved a damp cloak into her hands. Outside, the forest had fallen into that eerie stillness that only comes after a storm. The jungle, saturated and steaming, dripped in quiet tension. Alara stepped carefully through the camp perimeter. No guards approached her. No drones hovered too close. He was there just as he had been for hours. Crouched low near the embankment, watching the camp lights. He made no sound when she approached. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They're going to kill you." His head turned slowly, pupils narrowing to slits in the low light. He did not blink. But when she stepped closer, he didn't stop her. "You remember me," she said. "From the war." A subtle shift in his body language. A breath held. Then released. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered. "But if you stay near me, they'll keep coming. You're giving them a reason." He leaned forward slightly, his claws gently sinking into the wet soil. Then he raised one hand and traced a pattern in the mud, 3 curved lines intersected by one vertical stroke. Alara stared at it. "That's," she knelt, tracing the mark with her own fingers. "It's a kin sigil. From your culture. That's a gesture of chosen alliance." He made the mark again. "You're not just staying because I saved you," she said slowly. "You're choosing this." He inclined his head slightly. Behind her, the field lights glared brighter. Corvin was coming. "They're not going to let this go," she said. "They'll never see you as anything but a weapon." She stood, placing her hand lightly against the side of his shoulder. His skin, though armored, radiated heat like a living furnace. "I don't know how this ends," she said. "But if you stay with me, we'll have to fight." His answer was wordless. He simply stood up to his full height and turned to face the camp. The lights were already flickering. Alarms began to chirp. The override signal had been activated. Inside the command tent, Corvin initiated the sequence. Alara's voice came in through the comms, pleading, warning, but he muted it. He'd tuned out emotion a long time ago. Neural override pulses flooded the immediate area. Dozens of microdrones synchronized, forming a net of suppressive frequency aimed directly at the Karnix's neurological matrix. Varike staggered. His body twitched violently, claws digging into the earth as the signal tried to override his motor functions. His limbs locked. His eyes flickered. And then he roared. It wasn't the kind of roar designed to intimidate. It was a sound that cracked the air with grief, with fury, with defiance. Alara fell to her knees, her own ears ringing from the sound. The drones began to fail. One by one their lights dimmed, their engines collapsed, their software overloaded. Varike surged forward and dropped to all fours, his back arched as he redirected the energy outward. The override rig exploded in Corvin's hands. Sparks erupted inside the tent. Nairai fell backwards, shielding her eyes as the generator shorted out. Outside, the forest began to howl. The wind picked up, unnatural and spiraling. Branches tore free. The ground trembled. Ilara watched as the Karnak stood again, breathing hard, his armor scarred but intact. He looked down at her, not in fury but in focus. She saw it in his eyes. He had made his decision. Not just to stay, but to resist. They locked her in the medical bay afterward. No one spoke to her. The guards stood outside the sealed hatch, phasers loaded, armor fully engaged. She could hear the low hum of engine core stress from the failed override attempt. The cruiser wasn't meant for planetary engagement, and the jungle's atmosphere was interfering with extraction. Ilara sat in the corner of the bay, fingers shaking. She thought about the mark he drew. The choice he made. Not instinct. Not survival. Allegiance. Not obedience. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Corvin or Nairai. It was a council liaison, a thin, silver-skinned Saraxi named Vale, with long ocular implants tracing her temple. "You've complicated things," Vale said without emotion. "I didn't ask for this. No one ever does." Vale glanced down at a datapad. "The council is divided. Half want the Apex destroyed immediately. The other half want you used as a key to bend him." "He's not a tool." Vale looked up. "Then what is he, Captain Miles?" Ilara swallowed. "He's someone who remembers kindness in a world that forgot it matters." Vale considered that for a moment. "The Council has decided to invoke Protocol 9 Theta." Ilara blinked. "That's a war protocol." "Yes," Vale replied calmly. "It grants us clearance to detain any sentient whose actions present a potential threat to interplanetary stability. That includes you. And it means you'll be transferred to a holding facility for questioning." "Where are you taking him?" "To a classified facility on Varelion. If he survives transport." Ilara stood. "You won't contain him." "Not unless he wants to be contained." Vale's expression never changed. "Then we'll ensure he wants to be." Guard stepped forward. Outside the window, Ilara could just make out the treetops swaying violently, not from wind. From movement. He was still out there. Still watching. Still deciding. And she knew something the council didn't. He wasn't choosing based on orders, fear, or programming. He was choosing her. And that meant they were out of time. The cold sterility of the transport cell was worse than the jungle. Inside, beneath fluorescent lights and white alloy walls, Ilara sat cross-legged on the floor, silent. The hum of the engines reverberated through her bones, a low, monotonous reminder that she was being taken, somewhere far from him. Varelion, they'd said. A classified facility. A vault for anomalies. She hadn't spoken since boarding. The guards didn't speak to her either. They were just men in armor, faces hidden, hearts likely buried even deeper. She wasn't dangerous to them. Not in the way he was. But the look they gave her said enough. Guilt by association. By loyalty. A sudden shift in gravity rocked the transport. Alarms didn't sound, but she felt the change. A pressure drop. A subtle vibration running through the floor. She looked up. The lights above her flickered, dimmed, then returned. A second later, one of the guards placed a hand to his ear. Then both guards moved at once, hands to weapons, eyes scanning the narrow corridor behind the sealed blast door. "What's happening?" she asked, standing. No response. The blast door slid open. A technician entered, pale, sweating, one eye bruised, the other wide with fear. "Deck breach," he whispered. "Containment level 4 is down. Something's inside." The guards rushed past him, weapons drawn. Ilara's pulse spiked. It couldn't be him. He wasn't on this ship. He had no way of following. Or did he? She pressed her hands to the cell wall. "Computer, list current passengers and biosigns on board." "Access denied." "Override," she said. "Miles Ilara. Captain, Earth Coalition." Authorization expired. The lights dimmed again. This time they stayed that way. Only emergency strips along the floor provided any illumination. A deep groan echoed through the deck, metal being bent, torn. Then, from somewhere beyond the corridor, a sound she'd heard only once before. Not a roar. Not a battle cry. But something stranger. A resonance. The Karnak soul call. Ilara's breath caught. Her knees buckled. He was here. He had come for her. The door seal hissed and the lock disengaged. Then the door opened. For a moment only silence and mist. Then a figure emerged, stooping to enter, towering in the narrow frame. His armor glistened with moisture and blood, not all of it his own. One shoulder was scorched, a ragged wound exposed between plates, glowing faintly with internal light. Barricade. He moved slowly, eyes fixed on her, claws dragging faint gouges into the titanium floor. Varke, she whispered. He stopped inches away, lowering himself so their eyes were level. He raised a claw and tapped his chest, then extended the same hand outward. She understood. He hadn't come to conquer. He'd come to free her. From behind him, panicked shouting echoed. More boots. Reinforcements. The corridor lights snapped back to full as council forces stormed in, rifles raised. Back away from her, the lead officer shouted. Varke didn't move. Ilara stood slowly, stepping between him and the soldiers. Don't fire, she said. He's not here to kill anyone. Get on the floor, Captain. I'm not repeating myself, she said. Stand down. One of the younger soldiers hesitated. Another raised his rifle higher. Ilara turned to Varke. Please, she said. Don't fight. They don't understand. He lowered his hand. Not submission. Not surrender. Stillness. Then one of the guards panicked. The shot rang out like a whip crack. It hit her, not center mass but across the shoulder, spinning her sideways. She screamed. Varke's body reacted before his mind could. In one bound he crossed the corridor, disarming the shooter, slamming the weapon into the wall with enough force to crumple alloy. Another soldier went flying. A third dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Then just as fast as it started, Varke stopped. He didn't kill them. He looked back at her bleeding on the floor. And then he knelt. Not in defeat, but to help. Ilara stared through the haze of pain and adrenaline. The council would never believe this. Not now. Not after what just happened. But she knew. This wasn't an apex beast. This was a protector. Varke scooped her gently into his arms and carried her down the corridor as alarms finally began to howl. Red lights spiraled through the ship. Internal defenses activated. Gas began to flood secondary halls. Emergency shutters slammed into place. They didn't make it to the launch bay. Instead, he found a maintenance airlock, small, underused, almost forgotten. He placed her gently on the grated floor and tapped at the control panel. Ilara, still conscious but dizzy from blood loss, watched as he pulled a small device from beneath his armor. A beacon. Not council tech. Old Karnak's tech. He had summoned something. Or someone. A dull rumble echoed outside the airlock walls. Engines. Something massive descending. I didn't think you'd come, she whispered, her voice faint. He tapped his chest again, then hers. Loyalty. Sure. The ceiling above them groaned under the weight of something massive docking. Then the airlock cycled open, revealing a transport pod, Karnak's design, but long abandoned by most of the species since the war. Slick. Organic. It folded open like an unfurling claw. Varke moved to lift her again, but she stopped him. I can walk, she muttered. He waited. Wash. Never pressed. She limped aboard with him at her side, one arm draped across his shoulder. As they entered, the walls pulsed to life, responding to his biosignature. The pod sealed. The engines flared. They launched. Behind them, the council vessel shrank in the void. Still alive. Still capable. But stunned. Inside the Karnak's pod, silence reigned, except for her shallow breathing and the low rhythmic hum of the organic drive. Varke pressed his hand to a wall node. A display unfolded, showing a route, out of council-controlled space, toward the periphery. Toward lawless regions where neither diplomacy nor fear could follow. Ilara leaned against the wall. They'll chase us. He made a low sound, not quite agreement, not quite denial. They'll brand you a rogue weapon. He looked at her, then at the sigil he'd marked on his forearm with blood. The kin sigil. Still fresh. Still bold. Me too, she added. His gaze did not waver. We'll need help, she murmured. Pause. Then he touched a separate node on the pod wall, bringing up a stellar map with several shaded systems, places neither of them had ever dared to enter before. But they had time now. Not much. But enough. Ilara's vision dimmed, the pain overtaking her senses. Before unconsciousness claimed her, she felt his hand settle gently across her shoulder. Steady. Protective. Unyielding. When she woke again, she was no longer bleeding. The ship's medical gel had already sealed the wound. The pod systems had taken care of her. He had taken care of her. She sat up slowly, looking across the pod to where Varke knelt, unmoving, eyes closed. Meditating, perhaps. Or remembering. They had escaped. But the cost had only begun to reveal itself. Because now, across half the galaxy, every satellite, cruiser, and bounty hunter contract would light up with the same message. Capture of high-threat Karnak specimen. Accompanied by human trader. Alive preferred. Dead acceptable. And somewhere, deep within the council chambers, a storm was gathering. one that would not tolerate disobedience. She would be hunted. He would be feared. But they had each other. And together they'd rewrite the rules. The Karnak's vessel coasted into orbit above an unnamed moon, dark and cratered, orbiting a gas giant that shimmered with violet storms. It was a dead rock, long abandoned after a mining colony collapsed under seismic instability. No patrol routes. No trade beacons. It was perfect. Inside the living vessel, Ilara adjusted the pressure seal on her arm brace and stood at the forward viewport. Below them, the moon offered nothing welcoming. No green, no life, just jagged emptiness. And yet, it would be the place where everything changed. Behind her, Vartel remained still, crouched in contemplation, his claws resting on the floor like statues carved from war. She had come to understand his silences. They weren't apathy or withdrawal, they were awareness. Every breath was calculated. Every choice deliberate. "They're going to find us soon," she said, not turning around. "We won't get many more quiet nights." He stood and approached, his steps silent. She sensed him pause behind her, then gently touched the edge of the viewport, claws tapping against the curved wall. "I don't know if you understand how many of them there are," she added, her voice softer. "Council warships. Command drones. Mercenaries who'd sell their own species for half the bounty on your head." His reply was not verbal but a low pulse in his chest, an echo of the soul call. Not a warning this time but a statement. She turned and met his gaze. "You're not afraid." He held her gaze and tapped his chest, then hers. A repetition of the bond they'd shared. She couldn't help but smile, though the weight of everything bore down like gravity. The moment shattered as a crimson alert flashed across the pod's organic interface. Ilara rushed forward and activated the sensor readouts. A council destroyer had dropped from warp directly behind them. No warning, no comms, only the cold, efficient approach of something built to enforce obedience. "They found us," she whispered. The readout showed more than one vessel. 4 smaller support cruisers flanked the destroyer. The blockade was absolute. No way through. No way out. The ship shuddered as it was scanned and a voice crackled through the audio system. Synthetic. Commanding. "Ilara Miles, you are ordered to surrender the Karnak specimen and submit to custody. You will be treated humanely. The creature will not." She muted the transmission. Varike moved beside her and knelt, claws activating an interface node embedded in the floor. The vessel responded immediately, biolights shifting from amber to deep red. Warform. The ship was arming itself. "You can't win this alone," she said. "They'll fire on us without hesitation." Varike looked at her with something deeper than resolve. He made a gesture across his throat, finality. He was not looking for victory. He was looking to end the game entirely. "No," she said. "Not this way." She activated the comms channel again. "This is Captain Ilara Miles. I request a parley with the Council fleet. In person." The silence that followed was absolute. Then reluctantly the reply came. "Transmission received. One vessel is authorized to approach the primary cruiser. Any sign of tampering or aggression will result in immediate termination." She nodded. "We'll go together." Varike snarled, a low note of disapproval. "I'm not letting them take you," she said. "But we can't keep running. Not forever." He hesitated. Then slowly, deliberately nodded. The Karnak's pod docked with the Council cruiser, 2 ships from opposite worlds bound by a moment of fragile tension. When the airlock hissed open, Ilara stepped out first, clad in her worn field gear, head held high. Varike followed, taller, more imposing than any of the Council guards dared to expect. He bore no weapon, carried no armor enhancement. His presence alone was the challenge. They were led through sterile white halls, flanked by guards who kept their distance, fingers twitching over triggers. In the Council chamber, 12 delegates waited behind an energy barrier. Above them, a viewing gallery brimmed with officers and diplomats, eager to see the resolution of what had become a political embarrassment. A human and a beast walking into their den. Ilara didn't wait for permission to speak. "You think he's a threat," she began, her voice echoing. "But what you've never understood is that the real threat was never him. It's your fear of something you can't control." "Spare us the rhetoric," said Councillor Devrin, an avian species whose feathers bristled with impatience. "You are a deserter, Captain. You violated Council law. You're harboring a classified bioweapon." "He's not a weapon," Ilara snapped. "He's not even just a soldier. He's a sentient being who made a choice you couldn't predict. That terrifies you." "You bonded with a creature that was designed to kill," another delegate said. "Do you deny that?" I bonded with someone who chose not to. There was a murmur through the gallery. The silence returned as Counselor Vale stepped forward. Her tone was colder than before, clinical. Varike, do you comprehend the charges levied against you? Varike stared at her. His silence was louder than any reply. He understands more than you think, Ilara said. And he made a decision none of your tethers, none of your override codes could force, loyalty freely given. This council is not built on sentiment, Devrin said. It is built on order. Stability. Then let him speak for himself, Ilara replied. You invoke law and structure, apply your own doctrine. If he is sentient, he has rights under the sentience clause. There was hesitation. Legal murmuring. The sentience clause was ancient, rarely used, inconvenient to those who ruled by assumption. Finally Vale nodded. Let him demonstrate understanding and intention. Let him speak. Ilara turned to him slowly. You don't have to do this. But Varike stepped forward. He reached down and activated the central interface panel with his claw, causing the chamber's emitter to translate in real time. His voice when it came was deep and layered, a blend of growl and rhythm. I remember the fire. The chamber fell silent. I remember the mother who died screaming. I remember her body broken by your machines. I remember hiding beneath wreckage. I remember you. He turned to Ilara. She did not run. She bled to protect me. I did not understand, then. Now I do. He turned back to the council. You build cages and call it peace. You build weapons and call them protectors. I was born for war. But I choose her. A wave of silence crashed over the chamber. In the gallery, even hardened officers seemed frozen by the weight of his voice. She is not my master. She is not my keeper. She is chosen. The chamber's glow dimmed as the emitter recorded his declaration. Counselor Vale's voice was thin when she spoke. You claim sentience. You claim choice. But how do we know it's not mimicry? Ilara stepped forward. Because he chose not to kill you. All of you. He could have. You know he could have. Counselor Devrin leaned forward, claws tapping on the console. And what would he do now if given freedom? Go rogue? Join the insurrectionists? Burn our worlds? Varike tilted his head. I go where she goes. I protect what she protects. That is all. The chamber began to divide. A heated debate erupted across the delegates, some shouting for containment, others for conditional release. It could have gone on for hours. Then Vale raised a hand. Enough. The lights brightened. The chamber returned to order. This council cannot agree on the future of the Karnics, she said. But we must agree on precedent. He has shown understanding. He has chosen restraint. He qualifies for independent sentient status under the clause. Murmurs. Outrage. A few nods. But, she added, he must leave council space. Neither he nor Captain Miles may return under penalty of death. Ilara closed her eyes. That was as much a victory as she could hope for. She turned to Varike. He nodded, slow and solemn. The council guard stood down. Later, as their ship detached and angled toward the edge of known space, Ilara stood in the viewing bay once more. Stars stretched out before them like a challenge. Varike stood beside her, silent. You saved me, she said. Again. He didn't reply. But it's more than that, isn't it? He looked at her. You didn't just choose me, she whispered. You chose what I stood for. Something they couldn't program. Something they forgot existed. He tapped his chest. Then hers. Then together they stepped forward, into the unknown. Not hunted. Not broken. But chosen.